Greetings, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to be reading chapter 14 of Destruction of Black Civilization. However, in the previous chapter, which is chapter 13, we learned that whites are our historic enemy and that every Black civilization, while it had its problems on the inside, it was destroyed by social and sexual integration of the whites into a Black nation. We also learned that white people will marry anyone that can give them an economic leg up, and that our biggest problem is unity or disunity. We have to stop accepting white faces and black faces in high places as the appropriate and adequate recognition that we need. And we have to go into these environments with a sense of self esteem and racial pride. I am a part of a podcasting network called KWAZ Radio.
Greetings. My name is the Revolutionary Matron, and my show is called The Learning Curve. I broadcast on a network called KWAZ Radio. There are other hosts on the network I'd like you to meet.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed here belong solely to the respondents, and they do not necessarily reflect any broadcast networks, affiliates, nor sponsors. The Learning Curve is a broadcast created for the benefit of my global community. Black is a consciousness. Content is being used for our commentary, research, criticism, education, scholarship, teaching, preaching, and news reporting. No copyright infringement is intended. I will make enunciation mistakes. I will give you my opinion about the information. And if you ever ask, I will send you my source.
Greetings, Bitter Medicine Podcast. How are you tonight? Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. The Destruction of Black Civilization, Chapter 14, Organizing a Race for Action. And again, as Chancellor Williams said, this is not the plan, but this is a plan for Black unity and empowerment. Just as it is the case of Africa and Black people everywhere, the central problem of over 35 million Blacks in the United States is unity. Nothing will ever be achieved by such a minority group in white America, well, nothing that leads to real adjustment for progress, until a powerful unity movement among Blacks develops throughout the United States. This must be done to achieve full recognition, even as men and women, not to mention full citizenship. As a larger and larger measure of nationwide unity is achieved, the next two steps should be in the direction of chartering a practical line of advance and of action. Once the courses of action are carefully and sensibly planned, so you don't do anything without a plan. Picture the picture of several thousand Black organizations, each independent and vying for leadership, is it is substantially the same picture of fragmentation and disunity in Africa that led to the downfall of the whole race. We have also seen that even in earliest times, very often all that was involved was that somebody wanted to be the head, was not getting there fast enough, and therefore organized his own little state. Most of them perished, picked off one by one. That same thing will happen to any Black organizations standing alone that disturbs the white mind. So, as you can see, what has consistently happened in our history is we had several small states that wanted to maintain their own independence and did not want to work interdependently against their enemy. And doing that is one surefire way to destroy your nation. The obstacles to unity are so great that the outlook is both discouraging and frightening to all but the strong with the will to both survive and overcome. The very first major obstacle to be overcome involves a mental revolution out of which Black America faces up to the stark reality that white America as a whole is its enemy, that Blacks will be recognized only in a subordinate role, that the scattering of Black office holders, high and low, really means nothing to the race as a whole, that there are actually two sets of laws as administered, one for whites and one for Blacks, just as there are two sets of wages and prices. And finally, that the Blacks' loyalty and devotion to the whites, in spite of all they have done and still do against them, mystifies the whites themselves and confirms anew their belief that such humble dog attitudes indicate the inferiority independently of everything else. So we need to stop looking at Black faces in high places because it means nothing and has done nothing for us. Until Afro Americans are quite clear in their own minds about their real situation in this country, all talk about unity and achieving equal justice will be just that, useless talk. But with a clear understanding of reality, the specific studies and planning for a broad program to securing racial unity and progress can begin. Greetings, Forecast. Thanks for tuning in. No one would propose that 35 million Blacks be brought under a single umbrella of leadership, nor is that necessary. But an organizing national conference should develop a program designed to form hundreds of organizations into one vast national body of millions, with each society carrying on its own functions as before, except in matters concerning the whole race, or organized by families and individuals, community by community, and state by state. Where the matter concerns the whole race, affiliated groups would speak in one voice through the overall organization of the race. And we're not talking about the NAACP. But since the overall race organization will be directly involved in promoting definite action programs on all fronts, the members of all affiliated groups will also be members of the overall race organization. The separatist movement of whites gave Negro integrationists another shock, showing them how utterly dependent they had been on white enterprise for just about everything, even in all Black neighborhoods, before the whites left their own exclusive sections. But the shock did not affect the dependent mentality. In an all Black community of 100,000 people, there were only 3 Black-owned grocery stores, and very small ones at that, compared with 75 white-operated ones. Not a single Black-owned hardware store, 7 were white, or a laundry, 15 were white, etc. In a city of nearly 1 million Blacks, there is not a single Black-owned department store or any other important enterprise. We have left it all to the whites, just as though they alone can create jobs and job opportunities. So you need to be a job creator. The perpetual hat-in-hand cry of poverty must end. What we have too much of is the poverty of spirit. Nor will the lack of finance alibi stand, for in spite of our lower incomes, we waste millions in luxuries. What we lack is the chain store vision and the enterprising spirit that organizes groups fully able to launch large-scale community-financed undertakings. The white withdrawal created citywide Black communities. Most of the first-class services went to the suburbs. Blacks must now fill the gaps in on all fronts, must prove their worth. The time for big talking is over. The time for big action is here. That is why a nationwide movement for unity in one vast organization of millions is the road to constructive action through the various Black communities of the country. Oni says, I need to resist making an American chapter. It's difficult to resist making an American chapter. I want to say greetings to you, Oni. Thanks for tuning in. If everyone could please hit the like button and share if you want. Wanted, all prisoners to enlist. Organizing the race for action must include a carefully developed plan for tapping and drawing on some unused and rejected resources and sources of strength. These are our prisoners and former prisoners, for among the many problems which the Blacks themselves must solve is crime, and primarily because almost all crimes committed by Blacks are against Blacks, not whites. I'd like to note here that all crime, period, is always intra-community. So white on white crime is a problem, Asian on Asian crime, Jew on Jew crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime. All of that is a problem. There must be some program of action in sheer self-defense. Both crime and the fears for safety it breeds will begin to disappear in the Black community only when such programs for unity, for opportunities, and public education as outlined in this work get underway. These offenders do not know that they are enlisted in the white man's army to slowly destroy the race. The war takes many unsuspecting forms, including the big and increasingly widespread use of narcotics among Blacks and an armed surrounding suburbia, trained by sportsmen, gun and target clubs, nationwide task force, specially trained for inner city operations. The list goes on and on. Chancellor Williams was writing this he published this in the 80s. Now our police departments are full-on military units in our communities. The community must be made safe for people to live and work happily and without fears for themselves or their children. Therefore, the Blacks themselves must have a program. Here is where community control, about which we hear so much, should happen. First, anti-crime steps might be widespread information, which is education, about the true meaning of Blacks' crimes against almost exclusively Blacks. And secondly, community development plans are designed to create more opportunities for all. There are other possible programs that could radically reduce crime, programs short of the final step. For if all else fails, the community, each community, should open an all out war along lines determined by the community. No such final course will be necessary, however, if the Black community becomes truly a functioning community in fact. For then there would be so much work to be done in an overall race movement that the so called criminal, in jail or out, would have a society not only to return to, but one that welcomes him warmly and needs him or her urgently. So he's suggesting that we use the prison population. As things now stand, all this talk about returning to society is sheer idiocy. What society? The only society I know about is as criminal and oppressive outside of the penal institutions as are its representatives inside of them. The big difference is only in the bigness of society in general, the bigness of crime off the street and up in high places, and the bigness of the hostility to and rejection of the men coming out of prisons by the very same society to which they are expected to return and adjust. We are, whether we realize it or not, imprisoned inseparably with our confined prisoners, ex-prisoners, and those who are headed for places behind walls. We are together. Who is going to be murdered then? Raped? Robbed? The whites? Of course not, and for several clear-cut reasons. The first may not seem obvious, but Blacks who so readily make criminal attacks on their own people are unconsciously striking out against the unbearable situation of what appears to be permanent disunity and therefore the utter helplessness of a race whose liberation from first oppression can be achieved only by united initiatives of its own. They, the so-called criminals, and their youthful followers expect nothing beneficial from the white world and see no reason for hope in their own Black world. Hence, like caged animals, they strike at what is nearest them, their own people. They are actually trying to kill a situation they hate, unaware that even in this, they are serving the white man as well. For the whites need not go all out for genocide schemes for which they are often charged when Blacks are killing themselves off daily in such a large scale. This brings us directly to the second reason why most crimes by Blacks are against Blacks and not, as even the whites would expect, against whites. The unequal justice system of white America encourages Blacks to commit crimes against Blacks and even rewards them with lighter sentences if convicted. Black life is cheap. Black womanhood is not honored. One may destroy either with both ease and relative protection. This is what we talk about when we go through these YouTube streets, and there's so many Black on Black crimes and the denigration of the Black woman and all of the different things where Black people are talking shit about Black people. You can't lift up a race if they don't value life and if they don't value those that bring life into the world. All of this could be radically changed by a nationwide organization of the race with a new outlook program of a new kind of education system, training when needed, and above all, enterprises as a job creating system. The very first moves towards the creation of the kind of society that will give both pride and inspiration to Black youth, and the kind of society that will have positive alternatives to crimes, and one to which each and every prisoner can return to with hope. In such a society, the very expression ex con or ex anything would be rigorously banned. This would be a part of the new education about which I have spoken. All talk about reform and rehabilitation is just so much nonsense until society itself is reformed. You can never rehabilitate men and women who have never been habilitated in the first place. You can never reform those who have never been allowed to be formed. Black society still has the spiritual qualities for the task. What is needed now is an honest and unselfish collective leadership. I have gone into some details in both outlining the most disturbing spots cast by the darkening shadows of history, and also trying to pinpoint what the possible signs of promise are. For the Black world, history's watchmen could see no sign of promise, no sign of hope outside of a position of strength, which unity alone can provide. But there will never be a real unity without a plan and a program to sustain it. Petty power struggles, bickering, and attacking each other are all signs of death, of a death wish as a race. Which way then, you still enshackled Blacks? 6,000 years of their history has answered, unite or perish. The tragedy that bloodied the pages in every period of their history because of this unity should be warning enough for the Blacks of Africa, the Caribbean, and elsewhere. But being the one people who are generally ignorant of their history, it may be well that many may not see unity as a question of life or death, but it is. However, there has been so much history during the time of those now living that the precarious situation of the Black race should be obvious to all. Only a largely united people can successfully confront oppressors and, without praying on bended knee or even pleading, secure the removal of all shackling chains. The choice is between unity of action and calm, careful thinking and planning the course of action through one vast organization of millions, either this or ultimate damnation. If the race is incapable of unity, it is incapable of survival as free and equal people, and will deserve all the inequities imposed upon it, for it will have proved beyond all question that it is indeed unfit to survive as a free and equal people in every respect whatsoever with the other peoples of the earth. What is proposed here is a moratorium on futile rhetoric and the beginning of real racial unity through an action program never attempted before. Therefore, Black leadership obstacles will still be with us, and for the same ancient reasons. A mass organization expressly planned to enrich the lives of the people on all fronts and directly through the people's ownership of and profit sharing in all economic enterprises. This will be too much for many Blacks to adopt, except in principle. And any such all Africa race movement in the United States will certainly be bitterly opposed by all Negro integrationists because no whites would be in it. This, in their skewed minds, means Black separatism. So as you can see, unity has been our only hope and choice for a long time. But Matron, am adding, you need to pick your group and unify with your group. And once you have picked your group and have unified with your group can influence any other groups that they're a part of if you want to. But moving within your group and supporting your group and providing for the people in your group is really your only hope. Black separatists, who are they? The simple truth is that the African people in the United States and throughout the world are not and never have been separatists. In fact, perhaps this has been their weakness. They have never really hated the whites, and they do not really hate whites now. This is what is taken for hatred when applied to blacks is their reaction against being hated, rejected, and oppressed. And the thinking, whites know this very well. When the cry racism in reverse or reverse discrimination and reverse segregation, they are saying in effect that only we whites can discriminate or segregate, but not you blacks. All white organizations that exclude blacks everywhere are normal and proper from the white perspective. But an all black organization excluding the whites? Perish the thought. Whites flee in mass from cities throughout the nation to avoid integrated schools and fair housing laws. These are the real separatists, not the blacks who never fled from the whites at all. Yet those blacks who said, let them go, let us not pursue them, let us stay where we are, stand on our own feet as men and women, and begin to build and improve our schools and communities, these, not the whites, are denounced as separatists or black nationalists. The pro-black perspectives Oni says, never been separatists. Ain't it strange how he say reverse discrimination but wrote this book 2 generations ago? There's generations to YouTube or white. The question which blacks must answer and act on or forever remain exactly where they are is how can a minority group in a situation distinctly different from any other minority group successfully live and develop happily in an overwhelmingly white society? This is the question that faces us squarely in the critical times at the crossroads, and the decision must be taken as a race and by the race rather than by self-appointed leaders. And I will add to this that our leaders may be self-appointed or white appointed, because predominantly the people that arise and come up out of the ether as leaders of the blacks are people that have been selected by white people. The term crossroads here must be taken more seriously than a mere metaphor, for a people may reach that intersection in life where the routes cross, leading in different directions. We only know the road over which we have just come. So at the crossroads, we must pause, uncertain. Which way now? Which way should we go? The numerous movements led by charismatic leaders with catchy slogans to shout are roads many will take. The biggest crowd drawing route will always be baited with some kind of religion led by some prophet or mystic. For religion, any religion, has been the means by which hope was maintained by a people without any basis for hope. And the search for real leaders has always been so desperate that the people flock to this or that promoter's movement, hoping that a true leader has been found at last. The personal wealth amassed by these leaders is a matter of pride for many of their followers. to the poor and ignorant who are being fleeced. Even the palatial mansion with colorfully uniformed servants reflect the power and glory of their leader. I'll stop here and pause to say, when I was young, growing up and going to church, they would say things like, I can't have a Cadillac, but my pastor can. I can't afford a diamond ring, but I can pay my tithes and my pastor can buy one for his wife. And though that was the ideology of the poor and ignorant, criticism is silenced, for these leaders are shrewd natural psychologists. They know exactly what appeals to the deprived masses, what will give them a feeling of being somebody and uplifted. And that feeling of being somebody is why you have so many titles in these organizations. Thousands will continue to be exploited by the smarter ones who know all the tricks that stir emotions and empty pocketbooks. And apparently, these countless thousands of faithful followers like it. There are several big organizations, each concerned with different aspects of the racial situation, which carry on successful and much needed work in their respective fields. Some were on the battlefront for the race when no one else was there. Without them, the situation of Blacks in America would be far worse than it is. If we henceforth advance at all, no matter in what direction or how different, it will be from the foundations of the best of these organizations have already laid. How long will the Black race stand at the crossroads, uncertain what to do, confused, and in fact, actually afraid? How long? Only future history will tell. But one thing is certain, there is a way out. There is an open, untried road. That untried road is actual unity and the actual improvement of the lives of the Black masses everywhere is exactly what is proposed in these pages in clear, concrete, and specific terms. The direction of civilization. Since, by the actual nature of things, racism will never be wished away, the human race could escape the predicted general war between the races and reach a real state of civilization at last through a symbiotic society. There would be no pretense of love and brotherhood, which did not exist in fact. The fierce and increasing battles of the whites against integration illustrate the point most clearly. And this is why people of the African race will have to accept the harsh fact that they are rejected by the whites, back up, and begin to reorganize for a position of power that commands respect, not love, and one that will therefore bring about the kind of cooperation and opportunities that eventuate in real equality and equal justice. Equality simply means the removal of every barrier that prevents a human from realizing his fullest potential, not these fake tropes about equality that they push on us. To achieve the goal of survival and self-action progress, the Blacks do not have to withdraw anywhere to form a separatist society, for the whites themselves have created an even more completely Black separatist society in their mad flights to the suburbs. Here, we have all that is meant by symbiosis before our eyes, living, concrete, and almost complete. For having thus withdrawn to make their own separatist community more complete, the whites must not be allowed to perpetuate the lower status of Blacks by also controlling and dominating the Black community from which they fled. What he's saying is that when white people run away from your city, when they don't want to live there, they don't want their children going to school there, they cannot be the elected officials there. They cannot be put in a position of power there. They are not supposed to be the ones making decisions about how that community runs and the functions of the finances of that community when they have fled that community. Let them be separatists and build up their community as they see fit, because we would have the population numbers without them to get a larger portion of the budget. But this will mean something far more than the Black people's fragmented programs of the 60s: marching demonstrations, singing, praying in public squares, shouting protests and slogans, or even the frantic screams of "burn, baby, burn." Self destroying, uncontrolled emotional outbursts must be checked precisely because they becloud the mind, make you just the easy targets the enemy is waiting for, and thereby prevent the kind of deliberate and rational thinking and planning that can not only defend and advance the life of the community, but can help civilization itself to survive. Now, it may be well that prospective whites will be quick to see, probably even before the blacks, that my reference to them as the traditional enemy of the race is not at all a call for increased hatred, tensions, and endless conflicts between the races. For those whites who have read even the high points of the record presented in this work will see with no trouble at all that I have singled out the exact routes to the kind of organized power and influence which will engage a subordinated people in self improving activities that demonstrate visibly their equality as men and women throughout the world. The perceptive whites will also see quickly enough that reference to them as enemies of the race will be a threat to their absolute supremacy, only if it causes the blacks to wake up, begin to realize how fragile is the basis for their present faith in the ultimate justice of the white man, and begin to unite to plan a different course, something they have never done. Above all, they can see the great difference between the powerful force of a massive body organized on such a large scale that it will actually represent the voice and will of Blacks in America, and the relative powerlessness of individual organizations and Black capitalist groups, important and desirable as each may be in itself. For they know that both the real economic and political power in the United States is silently exercised by the thoroughly organized giant corporations which, supported and financed by the tax-paying public with government grants and subsidies, operate realistic socialism at the top. The pro-Black perspective says, why is he backing down on them being enemies? I think he's backing down on them being enemies for political reasons. I think that it helps the story along, and it puts at the forefront the fact that Blacks need to unite instead of focusing on white people, because they can't be our focus. We have to be our focus. How has all this power achieved? How was all this power achieved? This is the important question here. Study their steps to unity and be amazed. No matter how diverse and competitive the giant corporations were, they formed, step by step, the most thoroughgoing system of overall unity in the world. At the summit of world corporate power, it is neither private nor free enterprise. Small business enterprises are indeed private, but they are free only in imagination. They are dependent satellites of the all powerful interlocking corporations and conglomerates. This quiet capitalistic socialism is interesting to study and compare with the openly proclaimed Marxist or state socialism. If we ignore the ideological principles and slogans that influence the masses, all appear as actually anti people and therefore anti civilization. The main thrust of civilization, like religion itself, was toward a more humane society, piloted and guided by the upward march of the human spirit as man slowly advanced from beasthood to a higher and higher level of mankind. Blessed with the mind that enabled him to think, analyze, discover, and invent, he could now evolve education and promote the development of science and technology to further the advance of the whole human species. The medium of exchange, which in relatively recent times became money, was expanded to facilitate the spread of necessities of life for the common welfare. But somewhere, back through the years, the whole upward trend was reversed as aggression inspired by greed led to the easy acquisition of both wealth and political power by the daring few at the expense of the many. Mass poverty and the ignorance and disease which are its inseparable companions spread as the wealth belonging to all the people came to be owned or controlled by the few in every country, no matter what system or ideology was claimed. It is not the direction civilization is supposed to take. We have what should be its reflection: advances in science, technology, great skyscraper cities, skies filled with aircrafts, moon flights, improvements in everything but man himself, his murderous, greedy soul being still ages back there in the caves of his ancestors. For the Blacks, who are the most victimized everywhere, their own situation can be radically changed in a program that regards money only as the means by which they can do things that must be done through cooperation. For the new cooperative organization we have been discussing will be different from those now existing in fundamental aims and objectives. The concept here is cooperation as the humane law of life, total and actual unity, brotherhood, and sisterhood throughout the organization, not just economic cooperatives such as stores, markets, housing, and farms, important as these will be. And we say this united movement toward a more humane economic system in the midst of a dog eat dog, money mad, competitive society will be a movement in the direction of real civilization. The challenging question is whether the Blacks of the 20th century can recover enough of the vision, strength, and will of their forefathers who built the Great Pyramids to undertake the tasks of this present. The liberation of our minds. This is task number one. It will not be easy, and it will not be easily achieved in a single generation. The reasons have already been rather clearly set forth. The present day confused outlook of the African people is the result of centuries of Caucasian acculturation, a quite natural process wherever one people come under the economic, political, and social domination of another people. The ideologies and value system of the oppressors quite unconsciously become those of the oppressed, even when the result is demonstratively against themselves. But all other oppressed peoples, whether Indian, Chinese, or Japanese, were able to hold on doggedly to their own racial pride and cultural heritage as the last resource for survival as a people. Unlike the blacks, they were never completely cut off from this sustaining lifeline of every people. In order to clear away some of the confusing cobwebs from our minds, we may be helped by rethinking through the following propositions. Number one, Black Americans en masse are not going to emigrate to Africa or anywhere else. This is a fact equally true of all large Black populations elsewhere outside of Africa. The real spirit of racial identity with the land of our forefathers and a real Pan Africanism will emerge only when those Black population areas, which through their own unified development programs have reached the level of strength that enables them to maintain a permanent system of exchange in visits, goods, and services with the motherland and other areas. So until we get trade and commerce and our economics right, nothing is going to be right. Number two, nobody is going to destroy the American system, and nobody is going to destroy either capitalism nor communism. There will be no attempt here to go into a detailed analysis to demonstrate why neither capitalism nor communism can be accepted wholly by the African people. Draw upon the beneficial elements of each? Yes. Accept either one as our total system? No. Those who have been so brainwashed into ideological blindness that they cannot see that the actual political, economic, and social structures of capitalism and socialism are substantially the same, with the same upper ruling classes, same elite classes, and the same controlled and exploited masses. Those unable to see this operating over the world before their very eyes will, of course, be unable to see what is presented here. The pro-Black perspective says, damn, he said we're not leaving and we're not destroying capitalism. How I forget this book. The forecast says this system will be destroyed just like everybody else has. In my opinion, this system will augment to accommodate different ideologies. And I think that we have to take the very best of the system. And I think that we need a benevolent ruling class. Y'all know I believe in a benevolent dictator, because that's what the exploited masses need. They need someone that's going to tell them how to do what to do, because left to their own devices, they'll just wind up re-enslaved by someone else. Number three, since most Blacks live within what is essentially a capitalist system, when they face up to the fact that neither they nor any other shouting group is going to destroy the system, then they will be in a position to plan how to deal with the system. They not only need wholly to accept it, but they should reject Black capitalism as a solution of the economic bondage problems of the masses. For it must certainly be clear by now that my whole focus is on a system that directly benefits people lower down, the great common people, and not just further enrichment of Blacks who are already well off and far ahead. And Africans in a capitalist state have the freedom to organize and do for themselves things they would never be allowed to do in a communist state. This all important fact must be acknowledged even by bitter enemies of the system simply because it is a fact. From this fact comes the opportunity for Blacks to unite and develop a more humane economic system of a new kind of community cooperatives owned and controlled by the people in each community. Number 4. The white man as an enemy of Blacks will become less and less a fact, and his hostile or contemptuous attitude will change to more and more of respect if and when this race, the Black race, begins to move forward on 3 fronts. First, the first is the kind of massive organization, the very existence of which the means of presence of an organized power to be reckoned with. B, the second is a nationwide economic development program promoted by the Unified Race Organization as enterprises of a united people, as distinguished from those of private individuals and corporations. The aims would be the creation of career and general employment opportunities, a national foundation and central banking system to maintain and safeguard the financial resources required to carry on the work of the race, and without which we can only remain a pleading and begging people. C, the third is political action. There is no question about better race relations developing as more and more members of the race register to vote and the number of Black officials elected to office increases, provided those Black faces are not just Black faces in high places. The recent notable increase in the number of Black elected officials in the United States, be it remembered, resulted almost entirely from the existence of predominantly Black communities after the whites had withdrawn to the suburbs. The bitter irony in this situation is that thousands of Negro integrationists quickly took advantage of this concentration of Black political power to be elected to local, state, and national congressional offices. If their program to break up all Black communities and scatter sight, the people among the whites had succeeded and they would have never been elected to office. The few well-known exceptions do not change the picture. Yet the focus, the great focus of today's Black leaders, young and old, is on politics. That is understandable, for we are still in the talking stage, and politics is a profession of talkers. Greetings, Sister Raw. How are you tonight? Thanks for tuning in. The drive to increase the Black vote should go on. The election of Blacks to office should be accelerated. Still, the central questions will demand answers sooner or later. What kind of persons are we electing? After the politicians are elected to the various offices, who, besides themselves, actually benefit from all the campaigning and voting? How much real difference would it make in the situation of Blacks in this country if we elected 15 U.S. senators, 100 congressmen, 5,000 state legislators or mayors, etc.? For what is well known is that some Black officials, once elected to office, turn out to be as conservative and reactionary as any congressman from the backwoods of Mississippi. Yet politics is too important to be left forever in present situations. Blacks need more political education on how to choose whom, or evaluating guidelines above the prevailing gift of gab. The respect of the whites, which was the point of departure in the realm of politics, may be very superficial indeed and tentative. Here he is seeking the black vote, seeking help in securing a better job and a better position of political power. Black political power can support but never replace an organized economic power system within the race itself that gives it the resources to do what has to be done. The only move that will command the respect for Blacks as a people throughout the world, and that is economic power. Number 5, the fifth barrier to the liberation of our minds would have been set forth first if we were proceeding in the order of importance of difficulty, for it is perhaps the most tragic and formidable. That mental blockage of total liberation developed from the way religion has been used to capture, enslave, and exploit the Black people of the world for over 1,000 years. For the African people are and always have been a very religious and high spiritual people, but we are also a religiously gullible people, believing that the religion of foreigners, with their belief in one supreme God, though called by different names, was essentially the same as our own. And this was right. What the Blacks did not know, however, was that while both Christianity and Islam were in and of themselves, great and acceptable faiths, they were being used by men whose main purposes were conquest and enslavement in pursuit of economic and political power. The whole continent of Africa was taken over, its wealth exploited, and its people dehumanized through enslavement, all in the name of Jesus Christ, Allah, and civilization. Their success is always assured because when the spotlights of history are turned on and reveal that those conquest aims were for political domination and economic exploitation under the cover of religion, they scream that their religion itself is under attack, and their faithful followers believe it. Thus, the great religions of both Islam and Christianity have been disgraced by evil men with blood-curdling cries of jihad or holy war against Black unbelievers, calling us pagans or the Christian missions of civilization that rationalized European conquest. The future task before Black Muslims and Black Christians is distinguishing their true religion from how evil men have used it to serve their own non-religious purposes. This writer, for example, is a devout Christian, but that fact does not blind him to the chains of bondage hammered on his race in the name of Christianity, or cause him to try to gloss over or soften the records of history when his own religion is unfavorably exposed. I will add a note here that missionaries are on a mission for economic exploitation. Missionaries are on a mission for economic exploitation. They go about around the world bringing their ideology and leaving with the wealth and the resources of a people. Missionaries are on a mission for economic exploitation. Even to this day. Yeah, pro-Black perspective, Chancellor Williams said he was a Christian. Number 6, To escape at last from our mental house of bondage, we must see this color crazy world in a clearer perspective, for color crazy it is. We should begin by drawing a vast African circle of honor around all those millions of Africans of mixed blood referred to as mulattoes, who from the earliest times to the present have stood steadfast and loyally identified with the race of their original Black mothers. They deserve special honor exactly because they did not have to do so when amalgamation of the races spread over Egypt and the Arabic world, and they had compelling reasons for not being identified with Black skinned Africans. So he wants to integrate the mulattoes that want to integrate. For they were classified as white and therefore not subject to enslavement. This fact is of the greatest importance in understanding the history of the race. For if skipped over, as it always has been, that history will remain confused. Therefore, we have pointed out that when the general enslavement of whites and mulattoes ended, and slavery was confined to those with Black skins, the color Black itself became the trademark of slavery, and therefore anathema, evil, and the worst that could happen to human beings was to be born Black. And this is why we have drawn an African circle of honor around those of mixed blood who, in spite of all this, even through the most frightful centuries, split off from their pro white and anti Black brothers and sisters to remain with the unfortunate Blacks. So he wants to draw an African circle of honor around the mulattoes. I think that we can integrate into Black those people that are Black, but if they are white passing, unfortunately, we cannot integrate them fully sexually or socially into the fold because they are going to look for an opportunity to escape to the white side. Okay. Where the future of an entire race is the concern, the importance of being fully aware of the great difference in racial attitude that has always existed among those of mixed blood should be self evident. The course of that future will be determined by a growing mass of intelligence and alertness, which enables people to use quite different criteria in the search for honest and reliable leaders. At our present, mental laziness permits any smooth and fast talker to assume leadership. Just knowing about anti Black mulattoes will not remove the need to know what each individual stands for. Color is no guide, for the blackest of the Blacks may be an arch traitor. The best route emerges before the eyes in every race-wide situation, a race-wide organization, in this case, to provide mass education in the homes, the kind of community-wide information that will enable the people to choose dedicated and competent leaders and other essential workers and ferret out the exploiters who worm their way into key offices, which enable them, as representatives of the white man, to defeat or check any organized all Black efforts to advance. Black is a consciousness, and that consciousness has to coincide with the person's color. Number 7, the 7th reason. In view of the facts already set forth, it should not be surprising why so many American Negroes are identifying themselves with the Arabic Middle East or Asia rather than Africa. The fact is that in the United States, all Africans and persons with any discernible African blood were legally classified as Negroes made a most important difference and contrasted sharply with other parts of the world where mulattoes are either classified as white or given a legal status of a separate ethnic group with a privileged status above those with dark or black complexions. Even mulattoes arriving from the West Indian islands are often shocked to find the American practice of classifying all of them as Negroes. They resent it, and many will not live in the United States for this reason. By contrast, the anti-Black mulattoes in the United States, while resenting the indiscriminate grouping, have also accepted both Negro and colored as proper names, and Black tentatively for strategic leadership reasons. They have sought a breakthrough by spearheading drives for integration, forced busing for racial balance, and scatter site housing in white suburbia. Most important, during the past 20 years, increased travel enabled them to learn with certainty that mulattoes are indeed considered white throughout the Muslim Middle East and the Muslim North Africa, such as Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and the Holy Land of Islam, Saudi Arabia. Now, anyone who is even moderately acquainted with the history of the Arab slave trade for the past 2,000 years would know that as a result, there were not only millions of mulattoes throughout the Arab states, but countless thousands of jet black Africans whose ancestors were also born there. All speak Arabic, are Muslim, and consider themselves Arabs for exactly the same reasons as emphasized before, that Blacks born in the United States consider themselves Americans. One can very readily understand why those Negroes who wish to escape Black or African identity are pushing for an identity of color with their kind in those countries where they are white and therefore in a class distinctly superior to the still enslaved or subordinated Blacks still living there. And they have every right, natural or otherwise, to follow their own inclinations. Indeed, the race would experience a joyful relief that comes with a new birth of freedom if this particular group would stop trying to operate in both the white and Black worlds, stop straddling the fence, and get down decisively on the side of its choice. They will never do this, of course, because they enjoy the same double advantage of a most famous ancestor, Leo Africanus, who, when pressed in Rome to say whether he considered himself an African or white, replied that he shifted to whatever side it was expedient to be on from time to time. When the Africans are on top, I am African, he said. This class of mixed bloods will always be an embarrassing threat to the other millions who, although are also of mixed blood, are wholly African in spirit and pride. These latter are the Adam Clayton Powells of the race, who are not only above suspicion, but are regarded by the Black masses as inseparably their own. That a little learning is a dangerous thing is also indicated among the relatively few who preach about the Jews being a Black people. Joseph and Mary being Black, and Jesus Christ also Black, etc. A group of American Negroes recently went to Israel claiming that they were the original Jews, the lost tribe of Israel, and that therefore the country belonged to them. Movements of this kind would not only deserve even a sentence here if they were not indicative of the frustrations and confusion and the frantic pulling in different directions which further bind the race in chains difficult to break. These are mental chains as well as blinders. Now, the confusion about Black Jews derives from the same historic developments which have been explained about white and Black Arabs, exactly the same. For we have shown that Jews were in Africa from the earliest times, and that Africans were in Palestine from the earliest times. And just as the Jews ruled in African Egypt for several hundred centuries, so also the Africans ruled over Palestine for several hundred centuries. But unlike the Arabs, the Jews never engaged in the general enslavement of blacks. In cases of warfare, either side might capture segments of the population to be marched off to work in the victorious nation. A notable instance being the Jewish captivity in Egypt and their later emancipation and return under the leadership of Moses. Not only did many colored Jews cross the Red Sea with Moses, but doubtless many converted jet black Jews, such as the wife of the lawgiver himself. Furthermore, as in the case with the Arabs, we often confuse race with religion. The people we call Jews indiscriminately are Hebrews by race and Jews by religion. Jew is an ethnicity. Anyone can be a Jew, but not a Hebrew. The Hebrews and the Arabs are both white Semitic peoples, and no number of offsprings by non-Hebrews and non-Arabs or adherents to either religion will ever change this absolute fact. After all, after all those centuries of racial mixing, there is nothing unusual about the appearance of a great colored leader in Palestine or anywhere else in Asia, including from time to time their rise to kinship in Israel, Syria, Aram, or Mesopotamia. But the white Jews, or Hebrews, and white Arabs remain exactly what they always were, white, and this is why, and who pretends not to know it, that there is a racial crisis today in Israel between the ruling white Jews and the colored Jews who have migrated there from the above mentioned lands. These are the colored adherents of Judaism from Arab countries, but who never became Muslims. It will be like going overboard to drown if we follow fanatics in attempting to black eyes everything and everybody that suits their fancy. It is quite useless and unnecessary to make either Jesus Christ or the Prophet Muhammad black or even colored. And he was an adherent of white Jesus, apparently. However, the most important point to be noted in reference to the American Negro group, the Lost Tribe of Israel, which landed there only to be rejected, is that it illustrates dramatically all that has been presented in these pages about those groups within the African race who are trying hard to escape from it, seeking their identity with a white people, any white people. And we have to say, let them go. The only thing we object to and will fight to the end is the attempt to program the whole race on such a march away from itself or allow them to remain as leaders of the same people which they wish to flee. Number 8, the final point. Finally, another major obstacle to unity and progress that is hardly ever openly discussed must not only be discussed but attacked in a nationwide program in the home. Obviously, only a massive national organization can deal successfully with any of our massive problems. This one concerns the inheritance from slavery. It is the attitude of indifference and disrespect of blacks towards blacks. To the average black, another black is not as important as anyone of another race. Therefore, black clerks or salespersons Therefore, black clerks or salespersons will serve whites more quickly and politely than they will serve members of their own race. This evil spirit from slavery pervades all classes, whether lawyers, carpenters, doctors, nurses, shop owners, school heads, teachers, repairmen, garbage men, trash men, paper hangers, taxi drivers, movers, haulers, or employees in homes, all of them. The only thing you can count on being first class are the charges, which are often higher than what the whites pay for the services these same blacks give at the highest level of their competence. Oni says, I don't remember this Bible lesson and that this a wild ass chapter. Yeah, he had some thoughts. And he believed in white Jesus. I can't believe that. But he wrote it in his own words. This is why, in proposing specific steps in organizing a whole people, emphasis is placed on training at the very outset for all persons involved directly in the work. For the great risk of developing real mutual respect must be undertaken by people who have it themselves. We are no longer interested in the often hypocritical rhetoric of brothers and sisters. Too often, brothers and sisters are mouthed by some of the biggest Afro Bush while mugging, raping, or killing these same brothers or sisters. Out of this general attitude, which serves the white supremacy position so well, develops an indifference to high standards of excellence in all black situations, and that strict business methods in the areas of auditing, accounting, or strict financial procedures in the collection, deposit, and management of other people's money. These safeguards are thought by many to have no place in the Black community. Here, we have a contradictory mental twist among Blacks. For while distrust of one another is characteristic when it comes to the thousands of do good organizations which we pour millions of dollars into, the idea is that one should trust the brothers and sisters who collect it, hold and control the people's money. Re-education will be required for the two mandatory changes in attitude, one toward each other in terms of mutual respect, and the other a change in attitude about efficiency, expertise in business management, and financial responsibility and administration. Unless we begin to develop and expand these first, a great survival movement will fail just as many other notable efforts failed because the rush neglected the necessary foundation. And that is the end of chapter 14. The pro-black perspective says, why Jesus? She. If anyone would like to come up to comment about what we read today, the link is in the chat. But as you can see, I did not know that Chancellor Williams believed in white Jesus. That is so distressing and disheartening because of all the people that would have thought that we would have believed, in a white Jesus, I would not have thought Chancellor Williams would be one of them. Not at all. I didn't think that he would think that there would be a white Jesus. But these black integrationists, Was he an integrationist at the end of the day? What do you think about that? I don't know. Greetings, Pro-Black Perspective. How you doing today, Oni?
I'm cool. She. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. This, I'm sure I don't remember this book. You know, I keep telling people read this book every year. Read this book. This dude said all sorts of stuff. He's like, look, you ain't going to Africa. You ain't controlling nothing. You better go vote. You got white Jesus. Stop telling me Jesus black. I'm a devout Christian. You're like, what is he talking about? Like,
I know.
Like what? Everything under the sun. I was like, whoa, okay. And it just kept going worse and worse. He just saved it. Was this the last chapter, or is it another
We
chapter?
got one more chapter. It's one more chapter. One more
Is
chapter.
that the one when he like lays out his plan? Now I gotta listen. I gotta listen sharp. I gotta be like, wait, what's he saying, man? Like, I don't even go for the Jesus stuff, but like, shoot, man. I mean, at least make him black. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. At least make them black.
At least make him black. This guy's like, don't make him black, man. I love me some white Jesus, man. I don't care about no contradiction. Call me, what? He's like, yo, the mulattoes, let the mulattoes in. Like, what is he talking about? Like, whose man's is this, man? You know? Whose man's is this? All right, let me start.
I don't know. I mean, we quote this book and we like reading this book and we like talking about some of the stories in this book, but the reality makes me wonder more and more. I'm like, yeah, we need to read it, but we need to revise it. And even in having him as one of our sacred cows, we need to look at, was his ideology one we could swallow whole? I mean, he does talk about some very important things and he highlights some very important information. And earlier in the book, he talks about the fact that the mulatto is not our friend. But then he talks about Adam Clayton Powell, which I think was a whole white man,
A whole white man. Oh man, that's crazy. That's actually insane. By the way, what's the next book?
I was just going to put up a survey whether it was going to be a James.
What you said? Was it gonna be a what?
A James Cone book or the Drusilla Dungy Houston book.
My sister. But who's James Cone? Who's that?
He wrote the book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree. He writes from a Christian perspective. He wrote Black Theology and Black Power. Bitter Medicine says it sounds like we're on a loop. Does it still sound like you're on a loop, Bitter Meds? Press a 1. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. He said it sounds like we're on a loop. Let me. But yeah, I was gonna put up a poll to see what you guys want to hear next. What do you want to hear next?
Let's do Carlos Cooks, man. Get somebody who knows some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Get somebody who knows something. Like, forget it. Just forget it. Because I noticed there's two reasons. One, nobody's reading Carlos Cooks. That's one. And two, like, he ain't saying this bullshit. You know what I'm saying? He on this giant turkey stuff. We need to get away. I don't know what Christian theology, blah, blah, blah. Now, Drusilla Dungy Houston, that's my sister from another mission. So I can't disrespect. But like, I would say Drusilla or Carlos Cooks, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, Drusilla's my sister. I can't say anything wrong with her. I'm just mad though, because I be recommending this destruction of black civilization 10 times a day. And now I'm just like, wait a second. Because he, like you said, he's the one that was like, yo, you better watch out for the mulattoes. And then all of a sudden, he wants
to draw this African honorary circle around them and integrate them into, no matter what they look like.
And then he's like, them donkeys could be worse too. And you're like, what are you talking about, man? Right? Who even said that, man? Like, yo, what year was this running? Like, nah, man, you can't. Them donkeys, you gotta watch out for them donkeys. You know what I'm saying? The mulattoes, you take them and like believe what they say to you. You know, they didn't have to side with us. What are you talking about? That white man made them side with us. Like, wait a minute, they didn't have to side with us. What was they gonna side with? You know what I'm saying? They're talking, yo. He was just full of it. But that's what I said. That's another thing I'll be saying about, like, sometimes when you're in America, it's like sometimes you're just so used to being like a minority, you know? I was saying this, like, Bitter Medicine, I think it was like there's the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset. You know, if you go through life with a scarcity mindset, you know, where like I need to get me some allies, you know, then all of a sudden, you know, you're gonna be like, well, maybe I can find a good white person, I can find a good mulatto. Like, yeah, okay, I mean, like, I'm not saying there's nobody, blah 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 blah, but I'm not looking for them. I'm not even vouching for them. You know what I'm saying? If a good white person shows up, I'm just gonna use that motherfucker and throw them to the side. And I mean, you can quote me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm saying, like, for instance, you know, if there's like one who knows how to do, you know, some physics equation or some engineering, you know, he can make a wind turbine I don't know how to make. Okay. You know, he showed me the wind turbine, and I said, "No, get the fuck out of my sight." Like,
Exactly.
Hey, just be lucky I don't beat your ass right here. You know what I'm saying? And I might be capping. I'm just saying I might be capping. I don't know, but my thing is that this guy's all, yeah, you know, you might find a good mulatto. What good mulatto? You know what I'm saying?
There's
Like
no such thing as a good mulatto. They all are. If they are not identifying as black with their brown skin, then they are not a good mulatto because they are rejected by their white side and they hate their black side.
Exactly.
This is where the Neely Fullers where the Neely Fullers come up.
Exactly. The moment you tell me, "Oh yeah, I identify as biracial," good for you, man. Well, this is then you know you can only be here half the time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
You can't be in the right side. You can't be in the middle. Yeah, and then that the half time that you're not here is when we really talking business. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Like, and the half time, that's when we really talking business. You could donate. You know what I'm saying? You could donate. That's about it. You know, I'm telling you, man. I don't know what time Chancellor was on. I didn't know he was not on. I thought he was on time all this time. But yeah. But anyway, I appreciate the fact that you read that. But yeah, I'm gonna do a super vote, I guess.
You're gonna do a super vote, Carlos Cooks.
Yeah, Carlos Cooks. I mean, because look, no, there's no content on this on him, and I like to say he was like I put him on top 3 of the 20th century. You know what I mean? I'm gonna put him top 3. Yeah, I say, look, Garvey number 1, obviously. Now Garvey was on that Christian time, and I'll tell you the truth, Garvey did say vote and all that stuff too, but Garvey was different. You know, Garvey was a beast. But after him, I put Nyerere. Nyerere is good. He's really good.
He is really good.
Yeah, he's really good. And then after that, I say Carlos Cooks, and especially like if we're talking about America, because that's the consciousness. And even Brother McCarty needs to read Carlos Cooks, but he don't want to. So you know, yeah, if you read it, of course.
If I read it, he might listen.
Yeah, of course, he's gonna listen. Who not listening? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, but yeah. So I'm gonna vote for that. You know, if you're still doing the poll, let me know. I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna try to see how many accounts I could hack to vote. How many accounts I could hack, you know? But yeah, definitely Carlos Cooks. But yeah, that was a really good reading. I'm just kind of mad. I didn't know Chancellor was on that time. I
didn't know he was on the white Jesus stuff. I didn't know he was on the drawing a circle of unity and partnering with these mulattoes, no matter what they look like, because the darkies might get us too.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and that's what I'm saying. Like I said, man, when you go to Africa, and the thing is this too, he's been to Africa, so I don't even know why he would say that. You know?
Right.
Like, he's been to Africa. Like, he was probably of all the people I know, all the people most of us know, he's been in Africa, like, you know, from America. He's been in Africa like the longest, one of the longest. Like, he was, so I don't know why he would even put in that, you know, watch out for them darkies. Like, that's crazy. You know, like that's I mean, it could have been a different time, but, you know, don't nobody say that, you know, watch out for them darkies.
Yeah. He wants us to watch out for him. And I am so shocked with all the evidence and with the information about where Egypt was and all of the information that was emerging at that time. I guess maybe it was an emerging ideology, Black Jesus, but he don't want us to blackanize nothing. I just could not believe it.
Yeah, he's wild. He's a wild man. But I don't want to take up all your time. I know you usually close out, so I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to close out. Is there anything you'd like to shout out this week?
Shout out. Dad, you got me on the spot. Nah, just nothing to shout out you. Yeah, you doing it. You know, like how the song go? No, that's not the right song, right? That's not
doing it well.
Yeah, I know. I just forgot that was. But yeah, you doing it. So That's what it's about, right? I'm just mad. I need to go back and apparently reread this book, like I tell everybody else.
Or
Uh,
revise. Well, just eat the meat and spit out the bones because, I don't believe in a white Jesus. And how can the propitiation or the acts of one man save us all? So, there are some things. I am of the mindset that there is one universal creator that made everything, but at the same time, they were breaking down very complex scientific problems and put them in allegorical story form so children would understand them. And
mhm.
somebody said, "This is the unwavering word of God. This was inspired by him." And it's like every book was inspired by God.
Mhm.
So, what?
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, like I said, I think Garvey is kind of like that too. Garvey believes in like a universal intelligence, and that we are, intelligent because the universal intelligence, and we're creative because universal intelligence. Universe, the creator. We're like part of the creator. I mean, it's an interesting. Like I said,
But I think he
I'm
was Catholic too, because he's got.
Garvey.
I think
I
Garvey
think
was.
see Garvey believes in the Black Jesus. I think Garvey got a book. But see, there's no PDF for it. But actually, I don't know if you've been reading PDF. Well, you reading book or PDF?
PDF.
Oh, okay, yeah. But Garvey has a book. I think what was it called? Volume 3 of Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey.
Hmm.
So yeah, he got a volume 3 of it, and yeah, he was like, yeah, but he's like, one of the reasons why he religious is because black folk religious. You know what I'm saying? Like you really, and that's the thing that I realized too. It's like most of us are religious. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you can't get around that. So and he's just like, and like at the end of the day, it's like even if you were him but not religious, you probably wouldn't have got as popular as he did. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
there are probably a bunch of people around him who were not that religious, but who cares? Because generally, I think black folk are religious people. And I don't fault them for that because like the world is hard to know.
Deal with.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's like what is what happens after you die? I mean, see, like people some of us are like, hey, nothing. You know what I'm saying? But like nobody wants to hear that. You know what I'm saying? So they're like, oh, I get to see my dad again. Yeah, you get to see your dad again. You know what I'm saying? You get to see your mama. You get to see, you get to eat, whatever you want to eat. I don't know.
Now, what's funny is that
Yeah.
in the Christian world that I was brought up in, when you die, you get the honor of worshiping and praising the God of the Bible all day long. That is what they got people high on.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna be like, well, Dr. Clark said. Dr. Clark said, he had posters where all the black folk was in hell and all the white folk was in heaven. He was like, well, I might as well go to hell now. I'll be hanging out with those little. Don't want to be hanging out with no crackers. Like, that's what it is, right? Like, sure. There was like a picture on online. They were like, yeah, anytime a person touches himself, there's like a million angels watching him. And I'm like, I ain't going to no damn place where I gotta watch people touch themselves. Like, I'm sorry, man. I mean, go kick a cat or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
go somewhere bad and kick it, for beating up animals or some shit. Cause ain't no way I'm gonna be, spend the rest of my life watching. But that's not my time anyway. But
It's
yeah,
not my time.
no, I got
Well,
nothing to shout out, huh?
thanks for coming up, and I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow. I'll be reading the final chapter, and then I'll see you on Saturday on Shoot the Breeze and Sunday on your show.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a plan. All right, wait. So you're just doing tomorrow, and then that's okay. All right.
And then that's the final chapter, and then I'm gonna go search out this Carlos Cooks book.
Oh, okay, I can link you if you I can link you.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. All right.
right.
Then. Take care.
All right. Take care. I would like to thank all my contributors, which includes Brother Bakari, Sister Raw, The Forecast, and Dorico Cooper. I want to thank you, Oni, for coming in, and I'd like to shout out everybody that came by today, which includes Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, The Forecast, but the Bitter Medicine Podcast, and Sister Raw. And Brother Bakari, I know you're listening in the playback. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.